Hey y'all, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is MOGIBETH, and for those of y'all who are new here, I own a six-figure reselling business selling primarily women's clothing and shoes on places like eBay and Poshmark, and today that's what we're talking all about. We're talking about shoes. In the past, I've done bread and butter brand videos. I'll link the most recent one up on the screen, but in those videos, I've typically talked about clothing brands. So I thought to myself, okay, let's look over my sales over the past year and see what shoe brands, what bread and butter shoe brands am I selling the most? What are they selling for on average? And then do a little bit more research and checking comps on Poshmark to see what styles and categories do especially well within these brands. And I talked about this in my last bread and butter video, but doing research on brands that you come across often in a thrift store, so that's what we think of when we think of bread and butter, mall brands or brands that you just see time and time again. Doing research on those brands is just as important, if not more important, than doing research on brands that you don't know about. So I wouldn't be surprised if all of y'all have heard about all 10 shoe brands on this list, but I want to talk about how many I've sold, what they've sold for on average, and then one example of a sale that I've made by this brand that kind of exemplifies what I'm looking for, and then quickly discuss what styles and categories do well within these shoe brands. So I love selling shoes. It's one of those categories that I think you can do well with all across the country. When I lived in Wichita, I found a lot of good shoes, and I also found a lot of good retail arbitrage with shoes when I lived in Wichita. I would go to places like Marshall's and Stein Mart, and I would find shoes that were on sale new in box. And then there was a time when, for whatever reason, I could find really good shoes at Stein Mart for like 10 to 15 bucks a piece. And they were new in box, and I could just sell them so quickly. It was a great deal. So I would recommend looking into not only your thrift store shoe options, but maybe if you're curious, next time you're at Marshall's, TJ Maxx, or Nordstrom Rack, or wherever you do your shopping, just look in the shoe clearance section and see what you can find. I will say my average sales price is probably a little bit elevated because I do source shoes through liquidation as well as thrifting and retail arbitrage. So a lot of the shoes that I sell are new or new with box. Usually they're just new, they're not new with box. And new shoes sell for more than used shoes on average, and then new with box shoes sell for even more. So just something to keep in mind, but still, doing research, I still think this average sales price is attainable for each one of these brands if you know what you're looking for, no matter how you source. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm gonna go through this list alphabetically. So we're actually gonna start with a brand that I was hesitant to put on here just because it used to sell so much better for me than it does now, but looking over my sales data, I couldn't deny it. So the brand is Haan. I know y'all have heard of Haan. I've sold 23 pairs of shoes, and this is the past calendar year. So March 15th, 2022 to March 15th, 2021, I've sold 23 pairs of Haan shoes for an average sales price of $44.17. So that's really good. And that's another thing I love about shoes is they typically have higher average sales prices, and they also typically have higher sell-through rates. And for me, when I was photographing my items, they were easier to photograph. They are a little bit difficult to store, but you don't have to measure them typically. And if you find them in excellent condition, there's not like any steaming or anything involved. So I wanted to share an example of a sold that I've had recently. Actually, it was a pair of Haan Harlow pumps that I had thrifted, and I had listed them for $50, and then my Posher VA, which is the software I use to send offers to likers automatically so I don't have to do it, and also automatically shares my closet. If you're interested in that, I would highly recommend it if you don't use a software like that already. There's a link in the description below where you'll get 20% off your first subscription and 2 weeks free. So I sold those for $40, which was 20% off with the offer to liker, and made a profit of $30.50 on those. And it took 47 days to sell, which is actually really good for me when it comes to shoes. And when we're thinking about Haan, it's really, really, really important to be selective because there's a ton of Haan shoes. I come across Haan shoes so often in the thrift store, and a lot of them aren't going to sell for very high. A lot of them aren't going to hit that $40, $44 average sales price. So I would say be really selective and always check comps. I typically only pick them up if they're in excellent condition, either barely worn or not worn at all. Certain styles like the Talia skimmer flat, I'll put up a little photo here, do well. And then I find that patent leather heels in either tan or black do well. But really, I think people who buy Cole Haan are often buying them for work, for professional reasons, so that's something to keep in mind. But a lot of what I've also sold is ankle booties. So if you find a really nice pair of boots or ankle boots by Cole Haan that are in excellent condition and they're the newer tag, I would definitely check comps and potentially pick them up. Another side note about Cole Haan is that their bags actually can do really well, especially their larger bags and their backpacks. I know that has nothing to do with shoes, but just wanted to make a note of that. Okay, let's move on to brand number 2. So the second brand on this list is Franco Sarto. I actually, after doing research, realized I really need to pick up Franco Sarto more often in the thrift store. But in this past year, I've sold 9 pairs of shoes by Franco Sarto with an average sales price of $42.22, which is great. Typically, what I'm selling by Franco Sarto is riding boots and ankle boots, but there are other styles that actually do well by them as well. An example of something that I sold this year that did well was a pair of new Franco Sarto Luciana, I don't know how to pronounce that, heeled tall boots in a size 6. They were listed for $70 and I sold them for $49 with a profit of $32.20, and it sold after 67 days. So it took about 2 months, but that's not too bad. But after looking through some solds, another style that does really well, other than boots, riding boots, ankle boots, etc., is chunky loafers. And so if I come across a loafer flat with a really chunky platform, I'm definitely gonna check comps on that going forward. But something also I noted when looking through solds is that I'm probably just gonna continue to skip heels by Franco Sarto. But some of their styles are actually really, really cute and pretty trendy, and sometimes they're sold at places like Anthropologie. So if you find a Franco Sarto pair of shoes that have the newer brand tag, that look trendy, that look like they're a current style or season, I would definitely recommend checking comps. And most of these shoes on this list is really easy to check comps because they'll either have the actual style name within the shoe somewhere, or they'll have a number which you can look up. Okay, so the next pair of shoes, this is a brand I used to sell a ton of. I haven't sold it that much in the past year, but it has still done well for me in what I have sold, and I want to continue to pick it up more. I used to talk about this brand a lot on my channel, and that brand is Kork Ease. I've sold 2 pairs of Kork Ease over the past year for an average sales price of $40.11. One example of a shoe that I've sold this past year is a pair of thrifted Kork Ease Cairn platform wedge sandals in a size 8 that I had listed for $50. I received an offer for $35, which gave me a profit of $18.51, and that sold only after 14 days. And that's why I love Kork Ease, is that they sell them really, really quickly in my experience if you find the right styles. And really the styles that do well for Kork Ease are their booties, so their ankle booties primarily, but also they have 2 styles that are kind of their core styles, and they're the styles that people are seeking after the most, and that is the Ava wedge, which I'll put a photo up of here. It's a wedge with a thick strap. Sometimes the wedge is cork, sometimes it's suede, sometimes it's leather. And then the Myrna wedge, which is similar to the Ava wedge, but it just has a lower platform wedge. So if you find those in excellent condition, I would probably recommend picking them up if they're for the right price. And that's the thing with Kork Ease, is that because they're a lightweight shoe, which is nice for shipping purposes, but also since the footbed is typically cork, they can get kind of grungy. So I always try to make sure that the Kork Ease I do pick up are in excellent condition, because if they have been worn too much, they just don't sell as well. Okay, number 4 on this list is the brand Naturalizer. This is a brand I really didn't pick up much before doing liquidation, but then through liquidation, I learned that it does really well, and so I'm definitely going to try to pick it up more in the thrift store going forward, and it'd be great to find it at the bins as well. In the past year, I've sold 11 pairs of Naturalizer shoes with an average sales price of $49.91. So that is really great. But that's mainly because I almost exclusively sell boots by Naturalizer. One example of a sale that I've had by Naturalizer is a pair of new Naturalizer June knee-high leather boots. They were listed for $80 and I sold them for $60, which left me with a profit of $40.80, and it took 101 days to sell. With Naturalizer, I would typically stick to boots and ankle boots, especially just the newer tags. I would skip sandals and I would skip heels for the most part, unless they're like brand new with tag, like if you had that kind of retail arbitrage situation with Naturalizer where you were able to get them for a really good price. I would say, you know, flats and sandals, and heels would probably be worth it. But with this brand, also just always check comps because certain styles are definitely going to do better than others. Okay, number 5 on this list is Sam Edelman. I've sold 28 pairs of Sam Edelman in the past year with an average sales price of $58.56. Again, I think I've sold a lot of boots, and boots on average are just going to sell for more money than shoes within the shoe realm. But of course, you can still pick up boots at the thrift store. There are other styles by Sam Edelman that still do really well. The sale that I wanted to cover were these Sam Edelman, I just actually sold these recently, knee-high boots in a size 7.5. I had them listed for $85 and I sold them on eBay for $70 with $15.99 shipping. This left me with a profit of $42.93, and they sold after only 9 days. So Sam Edelman is a very trend-centric brand. They are constantly kind of emulating whatever is on the runway or whatever is in style and creating shoes for that customer at a lower price point. So Sam Edelman, of course, is sold at most malls, but it's also sold at Shopbop, Revolve, etc. And when I was going through sold comps on Poshmark, something I found is if you can find something with a chunky platform, so chunky loafers, chunky boots, those are doing really well. I've sold a lot of riding boots by Sam Edelman that have done well. And then there are certain professional style shoes that do really well by Sam Edelman, most notably the Hazel heel. And if you can find them in a beige or a black, they do especially well. I'll put up a photo of what that looks like. It's basically just a pointy toe stiletto heel. I think people swear that it's like really comfortable, especially if you have to wear heels for work or whatever. But then Sam Edelman, of course, has been around a while, as with most brands on this list. And so there are certain styles that I almost always pass on, one being the Gladiator sandal. It's got kind of like a croc embossed insole, and then it's got like a beaded, you know, embellished Gladiator. They made a ton of those back in the day. I think they probably maybe are still making them, but they just don't tend to do as well. They're pretty saturated on the reseller marketplace. However, I did just get a pair through liquidation that I'll have to sell. So we'll see how they do, but I would not intentionally pick them up. Okay, so the next brand on this list, similar to Naturalizer, is one that I didn't really pick up much before liquidation, but now that I have, I want to start picking up more in the thrift store, and that is the brand Sofft. It's got 2 F's, so S-O-F-F-T. In the past year, I've sold only 2 pieces by this brand, but I have an average sales price of $98 with the 2 pieces that I've sold. And that's because both pieces have been knee-high boots. So that's something I'll definitely be looking for in the thrift store. But that's certainly not the only style that does well by this brand. So the sale that I want to go over was this Sofft Christy leather knee-high boot at size 7 that I had listed for $120, and it sold for $96, leaving me with a profit of $68.10, and it sold after only 17 days. So that was really great. And like I said, riding boots, especially knee-high riding boots, do really well by this brand. The ones I sold had like kind of a lace up on the back. That can do really well. But also ankle boots do really well by Sofft if they're the newer style, newer tag. Newer style sandals and flats can actually do really well by this brand. I would just recommend checking comps on this brand. I mean, again, on all of these, but especially this brand, just because it has been around for a while, and I would just generally try to skip over styles that look older. And then I would also probably just skip heels in general by this brand. But yeah, I'm actually really excited to, after doing some research on Sofft, try to intentionally pick it up more at the thrift store. Okay, next on this list is Sperry, and I've sold 10 pairs of Sperry's over the past year with an average sales price of $56.50. Here's an example of a sale. I sold these new Sperry Siren Golf duck boots in navy. I had them listed for $85 and they sold for $65, leaving me with a profit of $45.01, and it sold after 237 days, which is kind of the case for me with Sperry sometimes, especially in this past year. I think over a year ago I got a bunch of Sperry shoes, and so the ones that sold this year have just been listed a little while, but they can sell faster, but they always just sell, whenever they do sell, even if it takes longer, they sell for a good price. So I almost exclusively stick to just duck boots by Sperry. I don't even look at the topsiders, and I don't really look at the tennis shoes. I would say if you have like a retail arbitrage situation where you're finding those two styles new with tag for a really good deal, then yeah, I would definitely consider that. But otherwise, if I'm at the thrift store, I basically only look for the duck boots, and I look for them to be in excellent condition, which can sometimes be hard because of course, you know, people are wearing their duck boots in the winter, the snow, etc. So I did pick up a pair of Sperry duck boots in a recent thrift haul, and I'm excited to see how those do when I do get around to listing them. But yeah, I basically just stick to boots with Sperry. Okay, so number 8 is a brand I'm sure we all come across very often in the thrift store, and that is Steve Madden. I've sold 16 pairs of Steve Madden over the past year with an average sales price of $49.68, which is great for Steve Madden. An example of a thrifted pair of Steve Madden shoes that I've sold recently is a pair of Steve Madden Aaron clear high heel sandals, size 8.5, that sold on Tradesy. I had them listed for $65. They sold full price plus $10 shipping, which left me with a profit of $38.33, and they sold after only 13 days of listing. Steve Madden, similar to Sam Edelman, is a very trend-centric brand. They basically, again, take styles from other designers and recreate them in a more affordable way. Again, you want to think about, when you're picking up Steve Madden, what are some really trendy shoe styles that are big right now. You know, things that have that chunky platform, so chunky platform sandals and loafers and boots do really well. I also, since Steve Madden has been around a while, if you can find vintage chunky sandals, you know, those slide sandals that are all the rage from like 90s Y2K era, those can sell really well still. So that's something definitely to keep in mind. But then also, you know, things like squared toes, and then that clear kind of PVC straps like the example that I shared had. Anything that's really on trend right now, that would be definitely something that I would gravitate toward. But also another style that can do really well within Steve Madden that's not necessarily super trend centric is heels, and particularly heels that you could wear in a formal setting. So more of like a strappy heel in either like silver, gold, tan, black, something like that. Less of a heel that like you would wear to work. If I find that in a excellent condition in the thrift store, then I usually check comps, because again, it's really easy to check comps with Steve Madden. There are some subcategories of Steve Madden that can do well, like Steven by Steve Madden. So if you see a pair of shoes that just say Steven on them, I would look them up, because those tend to be, I think, more trendy. Okay, so the next one on the list, also, you know, a fairly trend-centric brand, is Vince Camuto. I've sold 20 pairs of Vince Camuto shoes over the past year with an average sales price of $37.10. It's the lowest on this list. And an example of one that I actually sold that I wanted to share was this pair of new Vince Camuto Riesta booties in a size 4. So that's a tiny, tiny shoe. I have a bunch of Vince Camuto booties in a size 4, and I've sold a bunch in a 4 or 4.5. Just through liquidation, I acquired a bunch, and I was actually pretty bummed about it, but they've actually sold pretty well. So this particular one sold on Tradesy. I had it listed at $40, and it sold full price plus $10 shipping. So I made a profit of $19.97, and it sold after 189 days. Again, Vince Camuto is a trend-centric brand, so you're definitely going to want to keep that in mind when sourcing Vince Camuto. If it looks like an older style, it looks a little bit outdated, to skip it. But if it looks newer, definitely check comps. It's, again, really easy to check comps by Vince Camuto. And I tend to gravitate towards the ankle booties and the knee-high or riding style boot by this brand in excellent condition. Those two tend to perform pretty well for me. But then certain styles of heels, loafers, mules can do really well as well if they're the right style. And since there are like literally thousands of styles of Vince Camuto, I couldn't go over which ones, but if for whatever reason it looks like, oh, that's really cute, that's really trendy, and it's in excellent condition, I would definitely recommend just checking comps on the shoes that you do find by Vince Camuto. Okay, so we are on the very last shoe brand, and that is Vionic. And Vionic is by far my favorite shoe brand on this list. Love finding Vionic. I have only sold though 4 pairs of Vionic in the past year. That's because I don't like receive them really in liquidation. I either purchase them through retail arbitrage or find them in the thrift store, and typically when I find them in the thrift store here in Portland, they're marked up to high heaven. But I actually have found 1, maybe 2 pairs of Vionic shoes at the bins, which is really cool. But my average sales price for Vionic is $41. And an example of a pair of Vionic shoes that did well for me were these Kira backstrap sandals. I think I featured these in a thrift haul. I had them listed for $60. I received an offer for $40. And that gave me a profit of $19.01 after only 5 days. And out of all 4 that I've sold this year, they've all sold in 21 days or less. And that's another reason why I love Vionic, is because they sometimes can sell really, really quickly. They are orthotic shoes, and so people who love Vionics and they're trying to find a good deal on them. I personally love Vionics. I have a pair of slippers by Vionic, but I don't have any other shoes by Vionic. But my mom loves Vionic. It's just there's kind of a cult for Vionic shoes, especially if you have bad feet or just your feet need some help in the shoe category. So the only really style that can sit or not do as well is like older sandal styles. And so I'll still pick them up if I come across them at the bins, but I'm not going to pay up for older sandals, and like that includes, you know, the flip-flops or just any other kind of sandal. But if it's newer and in excellent condition, like even just things like flip-flops can do well by Vionic. But yeah, tennis shoes, boots, sandals, if you get a newer style and it's in excellent condition, it's probably going to do well. All right, well, that is the video. I hope y'all got something out of it. Again, I'm a really big fan of selling shoes and thrifting shoes because it's a category that you can find anywhere in the country. You don't have to find like, you know, the Patagonia of shoes in order to make a good profit. You can sell shoes that are virtually sold at any brand, Marshalls, you know, basically stores that are almost everywhere. So a lot of these brands you can find in any state and in most cities all throughout the country, and so that means you can find them in your thrift store too. And if you know what you're looking for, you can get a really good average sales price and sell-through rate and average profit. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below if there are any brands on this list that you really like selling, and let me know other bread and butter shoe brands that would have made your list that I didn't include this time. I can do another video like this if y'all enjoyed it. But yeah, I had a lot of fun putting this together, and it was actually really good for me to just brushing up on my research when sourcing, so that I know what to look for when sourcing for bread and butter shoes in thrift stores moving forward. So anyways, thanks so much for watching. Make sure to give this video a big old thumbs up. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification if you want to be notified when we post new videos. And I'll see y'all in the next one. Okay, love y'all. Bye!